Hey guys, welcome to Sente, the YouTube channel dedicated specifically to beginner and intermediate Go players to help them get better at the game. So this week's episode is a little different. It's not really about techniques for Go, but sort of about how to deal with the game. I think this can apply to, honestly, people of all skill levels. So just to provide some backstory, I recently have been losing more games than I would like to. And I'm sure this is a feeling that every Go player knows and despises. But I recently got out of that funk, and I wanted to share with you all some ways that I feel worked the best for me on how to get out of a losing streak. Keep in mind, these are just my opinion, but I really think that some of these are very key points from what I've seen and from how I've dealt with it that keep people from getting stronger and increase the likelihood you're going to get discouraged. Without further ado, let's get started. Alright, here we go. So, losing streaks. How do you deal with them? Hikaru, you better listen up. Lord knows he's had some losing streaks, am I right? Okay, step 1. Identify if you actually have a losing streak. Let me explain. So, if you win one game on Monday, and you come back to the computer on Tuesday and you lose 2 in a row, that's not a losing streak. If you are a 12Q, and that is where your skill level is, like that is where the place that you're at for Go, you should lose 50% of your games, which makes sense. If your skill level stays the same, you should win the same amount of times as you lose if you're at the rank you're supposed to be. Now, if you study and you learn more and you identify what works for people with higher ranks than you and you rank up, you should slowly start to move up. But if you lose just as much as you win, that just means you're just doing normal. You're doing fine. I would define a losing streak as dropping 2 stones without winning a single game from the drop. So, just losing, maybe 4 or 5 losses, 6 losses, and then maybe you've got yourself a losing streak. But if you've lost 2 or 3 games and you've got some wins interspersed in there, you're not a losing streak. You just gotta recollect yourself and play, and you'll start winning again, and there's probably nothing that you really need to change, at least from what I've found. Okay, step 2. Now, we have identified that you've lost like 6, 7 games in a row, and you can call yourself that you're on a losing streak. How do you really go about, breaking out of that? Well, the first thing you have to recognize is that you were at your old rank for a reason. You didn't randomly put stones down on the board and beat it 11Q to get to your 12Q rank. You didn't beat all those 13 Qs for 0 reason. You have the skill set, if you are at the rank you are at, to be there. You have the technical ability, because you've shown that you have, as long as you have a reasonable number of games under your belt. The reason you're probably on a losing streak is most likely because of your mentality not involving technical skills. Your mentality while playing the game is bleeding into your technical judgment and causing you to make mistakes. So now the next obvious thing you have to realize is, I have everything I need to be at the rank that I was. What am I thinking about differently that I wasn't thinking about differently before? And there could be a lot of reasons for that. I'm going to go through some of them right now. Okay, so the first thing that might be happening is that you dropped a rank just because, you got from 12 to 11Q and you were super excited, but then you lost a game to an 11Q and you're back at 12. And now you're pissed. That's definitely happened to me, and it's happened to anybody who's played Go, and that anger might be causing you to overextend, to, play very, very hastily. You could be thinking to yourself, I'm 11Q, I should be able to beat a 12Q easy, and then when you lose to a 12Q, you get really insecure, and then start angrily, if you see yourself losing in the game, trying to kill something huge, and then end up losing even worse. What I think you have to recognize, the key thing about Go, is that you're not one rank. Every Go player is a range of ranks. We are not just, so right now, on OGS, I'm 10Q. That doesn't mean that I'm better than all 11Qs and that I'm not as good as all 9Qs. Everybody fluctuates between 2 or 3 ranks. And if you keep learning and you keep playing, gradually that range of ranks sort of just shifts up the ladder. But just because you're 10Q or an 11Q doesn't mean you can't drop back to 12. It doesn't mean that you're better than every 12Q out there. There could be a 12Q that you're playing that's where you were at 2 days ago and on the verge of being an 11Q. He's got all the tools he needs, and he will win. There could be players that just play with a different style that you're not used to. You have to try to learn to adapt to. Just because you drop a rank, don't take it to heart, because you operate on a range, and you should trust yourself. You should say that, you know what, I worked to get to this place where I'm at. If I drop a little bit down, I know that I'm good enough to go back up because that's where I got to in the first place. Trust your skills and trust your Go playing. And don't get angry if you drop a rank and then start playing sloppy, because that's just going to make everything worse. Okay, the next one I think can be a really big discouragement is fear of new strategies. And I think this can really easily translate to a losing streak and discouragement at the game. As you progress in Go, right? By definition, in order to be a higher rank, you need to know more things than the people at your level. And so if you go from 12 to 11Q or 11 to 10Q or maybe get into the single digits, that means that there's a certain set of skills that you have under your belt that you can, statistically, in general, play and master better than the people with a rank lower than you. Which means that when you up a rank and you play better people, they're going to know shit that you don't know. And that is a natural thing. And so I feel like a lot of people, when they rank up, they get a little overwhelmed and scared because, oh my god, like, yeah, I ranked up, but then they lose the very first game they play in that new rank because they're playing somebody better. But the thing is, you sort of need to get used to your rank. You know, it's going to take time for when you rank up to absorb the skills that this next set of opponents have that you aren't really familiar with yet. And this is going to take some time. So when you get to a new rank, don't expect to stay there. I mean, unless you're sandbagging or something, you should drop back down to where you were until you fluctuate and get more experience from the people ahead of you. And understand, oh, like, these are the skills that I need to learn to compete with this next group of opponents. So if you rank up, yeah, that's exciting and that's really cool, but don't expect to stay there. But be excited in the fact that you know your stuff at the place where you were. And treat those next few games as sort of just like a lesson, like sponging. Like, okay, I'm going to try to win, but I'm going to be on the lookout for anything he does that I didn't know about. And I'm going to look at that after the game and try to see if I can use that against other people. Okay, this cause is a really big one, and I think it affects a lot of people. It's called the study trap. Okay, so essentially from what I've learned in my experience talking to Don players, talking to really good players, if you're a Q player and you want to get to Don, you just need to play. Like, you need to read not a minimal amount of books. Probably Tsuji is one of the most important things you would need to get good at, but really just by playing you absorb the skills that you need to get to Wanda. And then once you get to Wanda, then you can start looking at every Joseki variation ever, and Fuseki, and all the advanced topics. But there are people, especially Q players, that really love learning about the game, so they read book after book, and do Joseki after Joseki, and do exercise after exercise, and never play any games. It's like watching a bunch of boxing videos and never actually going to the gym and hoping that you'll be able to be a really good boxer one day or something. It's like anything. Your brain will process and assimilate this knowledge if you do it. Studying is a great help, but playing should be your first priority. And there's a lot of people and a lot of Go players out there, I was one at one point, that were afraid to go to the Go board. They just wanted to study more because that was safe. Studying made them feel like they were improving, and it made them feel like, I'm getting better at this, without the risk of showing that somebody's still better than them and that they didn't improve as much as they thought they were. And it gives you a false sense of security. It makes you think that you know all these things when it's really hard to put them into practice. Alright, so now I've identified some of the causes of losing streaks and discouragement at Go, and what would a how-to video be without some tips on how to fix that? So sit tight, and I hope you're not wearing socks because they will be blown off. Okay, tip 1. You're going to need to identify causes for the losing streak, because more often than not, a losing streak is a compounding of the same mistake over and over again. So let's say you're playing and you got in this really complicated fight, right? And you lost. You lost the fight, so you drop back down. You get really annoyed. You get more annoyed, which means you want to fight more. So your next game, you fight again. And because you're already pissed off that you lost the first time, you're gonna probably lose that fight again. And so you lose again. You get more pissed. You play another game, and this time maybe he starts a fight with you. And then you're just so annoyed that you lose that fight. And so all of these losses in this losing streak are due to lost fights. You're going to have to look at your games and figure out what exactly is making these losing streaks. Maybe the opposite happened. Maybe you lost a big fight and you lost your mojo. And now anytime somebody approaches you, you just like, and then you just like play away from them. And you let them walk all over you on the board. And you don't get any territory. You need to figure out what part of the game initially caused that. I would recommend going to the first game that you lost that was the start of that losing streak and figuring out why. Because odds are, you just lost because, like, just random. You got in a complicated fight, and you read a wrong move and you were off by 130. Big deal. That happens to everybody. You know, if you let that bother you to the point where you get sloppy at fighting, and then all the rest of your games you fight and legitimately lose just because you suck now, because you're so angry, that's a problem. And you gotta make sure that you can reset yourself and recenter yourself and figure that out. But there's a lot of reasons for a losing streak, and you need to figure out why. Okay, this tip 2 is sort of for the study trap person. Certainly, if you got in the study trap, the first thing you should do is like play more games. But if you do actually want to study the game, and you find you're in a losing streak, and you're just trying to figure out technically why, like what you're missing here, I don't recommend studying from down level games. If you are like a double-digit queue or like a high single-digit queue. Low single-digit queues, yeah, go for it. You're basically there. But what any person should do at some rank, right, is look at games maybe 2 or 3 stones above them. So if you're like a 10 queue, look at 7 queue games or 8 queue games. Because there's certain ways that you play in a progression as you learn more about the game. And if you try to, as a 10 queue, look at a down-level game and try to make sense out of it, you're going to find all the wrong reasons for why they're doing what they're doing. And you're going to try to apply those reasons in the wrong situations and get screwed. But if you look at a game 1 or 2 stones or 3 stones above you, you've got a better chance at understanding why they're doing what they're doing and looking at some of the mistakes that they're making. And so if you are on a losing streak and you're like, man, like I dropped from like 10 to 13 queue, you know, maybe look at some 8Q games and sort of figure out how they stay collected or how they react to a situation that you really weren't familiar with. Okay, this tip is actually probably one of my most important tips, and I know it sounds really cheesy, but trust yourself. Like I said in the first beginning of the video, you were at that rank for a reason. You didn't just put random stones on the board and get there. You had a thought about the game, and you played the game, and you beat people, and you got to where you were. Just because you fall a few stones, and just because, you know, your head really wasn't in the game these past few days, doesn't mean that within a few days you're not going to get back to where you were if you just trust yourself and play the game that you played before. You know, think about the games that you felt really good about. If I fall short a few games, I just trust in the way that I've played when I knew that I was playing very well, and just went back to that, because oftentimes your playing style changes as your mental attitude changes. And you don't play how you played when you were at your best. But you haven't lost any of the technical ability that you had to get yourself to the rank where you were. So just keep playing. Just trust yourself. Understand that, first and foremost, if you're not having fun at learning about this game, that should come first, and ranking up should come second. Unless you're like a pro and you live or die by how good you are at this game. Everyone wants to get better, but as for me, I am way too busy to invest time in something that pisses me off. I just don't have that time, and I'm not gonna do that. I am going to have fun at this game and try to get better. But if I don't improve as fast as I would like, who gives a crap? I'm just gonna keep playing. And just keep playing my game and enjoy learning about the game, because every game you play, they're giving you a lesson. And you're getting experience, even subconsciously, your brain is figuring out this game a little bit better with every game you play, as long as you approach it with a healthy attitude. So those are my 3 tips, and sort of how I feel about when people get in a losing streak or a rut and how they can break out of it. Again, these are all just my thoughts, my experiences. If you have anything else to add, definitely leave a tip or a hint in the comments below. How do you generally deal with losing streaks? Do you try to get back on the board and play another game, or do you take a break? What works for you? Definitely let me know. And thanks so much for subscribing. And I will come out with more videos soon. As a side note, make sure to check out my Twitch channel on Thursday at, I believe it's 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Time, where I do the second episode of Let's Go. It's really fun, went over really well last week, and you should definitely be there, because it's going to be awesome. So that's all I got for you today. I'll see you on the grid.